Okay. So, it was, starting with the washing machine video, it's funny because, well, first of all, just putting it out there, his accent is kind of funny. So, when he was talking about how the washing machine was so interesting, it just made me laugh a little bit, because he's like, yeah, my grandmother sat there and was fascinated, watched the whole thing happen, and, just how he was talking about how, like, Sweden didn't have washers and stuff. But with that video, it was very interesting when he made that, like, that chart, how it had the 7 billion people and how 2 billion people were below the poverty line, and, like, they spent about $2 a day. And then, so there was, yeah, and then there was the, what he called the airline, which had the 1 billion people who spent about $80 a day, and then there were the 4 billion people in the middle. But with his talk, he talked about how there's electricity, which was the middle group, but then only 1 billion of those 4 billion had a washer, which was the point, and that was, he called it the wash line, and, like, it spent $40 a day, and it just makes me think, because it's like, okay, I have a washer in my home, do I really spend, on average, like, $40 a day? And I like to think not, but maybe it's mostly because I'm a college student, so I don't have that money to spend. But then he talked about the energy, and it made me think of also being, like, a college student, and where, like, we pay that deposit for, like, housing, and we don't really worry about how much we're paying for energy until, like, you get married and you have to pay for your own utilities. But it showed that the 1 billion people above the airline use 6 units of the 12 units of energy available, while the 1 billion people above the wash line use 2 units, and 3 billion used a unit each, the electricity, and then below the poverty line, they only had, like, a unit each, for each billion. And it was kind of like, I don't know, it just, when you look at, like, the poverty line and how little people have outside of the United States, it kind of just blows your mind, because you're like, okay, I have a lot more than I thought I did, and, you know, it just humbles you a little bit. It's good. But for the other video, how she talked about how, education was a big thing, and, the natural experiment was the first thing, or one of the first things that she talked about, and how this girl, couldn't afford, or her parents couldn't afford to let her go to school, but then they got donations, and this one man donated $10,000 for it, and then she went on to graduate high school, middle school, and then be able to send money back to her family, which is cool too, because it's like, it shows how much education can really affect. And you think that education right now is so expensive, and if you don't, like, take advantage of the education you're getting, yeah, you're wasting money, you know. But if you do, like this one girl did in China, and you take that money for education, but then use it so that you can get more money in the future, you'll be better off. She also talked about how women were the solution and not the problem. I kind of smiled at this part. I take pride in being a woman, you know, with an education. And I guess it's weird to think how much the rest of the world looks down on girls getting education. Like, the one example that she gave was, I think it was in China, and it showed this picture of a girl who was malnourished. She was skinny, she just deformed, you could see her bones and everything. But, Cheryl Wudunn, the girl who gave the talk, she had said that all the boys, all her brothers, were totally fine. And it was just her that was like that. And it was kind of like, okay, well, obviously they're pointing out very bluntly that they don't care much for the women. The men can do more in their eyes, and it's disappointing. But then you hear those wonderful stories of, like, how the women have, gone through education and become higher. And it's also weird because it's like, we want to have, women get an education. Like, we want them to be more equal or whatever, but at the same time, in church, like, one of the statistics that she gave, for women being educated, it was like, they get married later in life, they have kids later in life, and they usually have fewer kids. And it's like, okay, well, in our church, we're supposed to get married and have kids so that we can, bring about the plan of salvation and stuff. So it's like two contradicting kind of factors, because it's like, well, we have the church, which is telling us to get married and have kids, and then we have an education, which is good overall, but we need to, like, figure out how to balance having an education, but still doing our part to be mothers and to take that role and put it into play. So, and we can be happy with an education and with kids. So, we just need to learn how to balance it.